First of all, I would like to introduce you to the first chairman, Keshav Chandra. Keshav Chandra joined Indian Administrative Service in 1995. In the last 20 years, he has served in Arunachal Pradesh, Delhi and Goa. He reckons Arunachal Pradesh and his most memorable posting where he spent a year at China and Burma border. In Delhi, he held the post of Exciting Commissioner Secretary and the MC and Secretary to the Chief Minister. So thank you, Keshav Chandra.
Or yeah, and this is better. This will come. Good morning, Agnes, friends here on dais, and all the learned friends sitting there in the audience. I would be speaking on the natural monopoly perspective. I'll simply give you certain background of how things have evolved over the period of time, and I would not be speaking from some PowerPoint presentation. I'm always comfortable speaking impromptu, so please bear with me. And I'd like to throw light that cities of India, in that perspective, how they fare and what are the challenges, how we are trying to overcome the challenges in India. All the natural monopolies as such over the period of time, if you just trace the history, all such monopolies started in the private sector. I'm talking about 18th century as such. Gradually, especially the water sector as such, because electricity came later, water sector as such, if you see the great cities, big cities in the world like Seville, Paris, Buenos Aires, Boston, New York, all such places, the supply system started in the private sector. And why I'm harping on this, because I'll come to the perpetual debate which is raging for years together about the management paradigm of the entire natural monopoly. The management paradigm defines ultimately that how successfully a city is able to cope up and manage the services it is intending to provide to its citizens, and which paradigm is better. And in that direction, what is very important is to trace that which management system has successfully delivered over the years, how the changes have crept in, and what changes we have been able to assimilate post neoliberalization as such. So going back to the 18th century, as I told you, that it all started in the private sector. Then gradually, the concept called public good came into play, that the private sector could not extend its services to the poorer section of the society. It was confined to the affluent population. And a result of that, as the city grew, the governments tried to extend these services to the poor also, and that's why early 19th century you will find that all such utilities were in the hand of the government. Now, though it was taken over by government, and a paradigm started, and you can just see it it's similar both in power sector and water sector. Same trend is moving as in art world almost. The paradigm and the focus during that time was more generation. And that's why you'll find that early 19th century, you have one of the largest dams in the world was built, because there was a focus on production, more production, because you need some more. One of the great dams like Aswan, Bhakra-Nangal that time was built, Hoover Dam in US was built. All over the world, big dams, large dams were built. They focus on more water to different sectors altogether. Electricity, same kind of emphasis was there. More production so that lot many areas can be covered, industry can be catered to, all other sectors, ancillary sectors can be catered to. More focus on production, less care about the losses as such. In water sector, it was called the municipal paradigm as such. Gradually, after Washington consensus, the whole world's focus shifted towards conservation of these two utilities. That how do we conserve water? The realization came that water is scarce, so is electricity, because electricity cannot be produced unless until you have certain inputs, and so the conservation paradigm started. Fortunately, that time itself, Thatcherism and Reagan's administration in US, the whole focus was on neoliberalism, and that's why again private sector entered in these two fields. Now, since then, at least in water sector, many experiments have been done about the management of the water supply in cities. It started from England and Wales, where the total asset sales took place. In Chile, marketization took place. In France, you'll see that all big companies, in fact, it's the motherland of all huge water companies. It's Suez, Veolia, all such companies are from France itself. So all the municipalities, they entered into PPP system. Fortunately, Netherlands took separate route altogether. It corporatized its water utilities. So in Europe, entire Europe and Chile and Argentina, you'll find different management paradigm altogether evolving. But unfortunately, South, if you see that many experiments have been done, same good companies. I remember there's a company called New Water from England, is doing fantastic work in Ghana, but then one night the entire crew has to leave the country because of some problem. Similar experiments were carried out in developing world, but it could not succeed. And we have to find that why it could not succeed. What is the focus? We all are familiar with the riots of Cochabamba, La Paz, 2003-2004. There was a huge riot. The water was in hands of private sector, and there was a huge outrage that prices were hiked many times, and people came on the street. Many people died also. And that 2002-2003 saw the trend of reverse neoliberalism as such. So again, the focus was re-municipalization, as you say, as on today. Now, what is it that went a sea change over the years? To my mind, there are four factors. As I'm looking after water utility, probably this is the largest water utility in the world. I'm looking after Delhi Jal Board, which caters to almost 20 million population. In water utility, there are four fundamentals. The fundamentals are basically your metering, pricing, universal connectivity, and fourth, to my mind, most important, is independent regulation system. I would not leave electricity sector because 3 years back I was holding another charge of Secretary Power in Goa. So that's why I'm slightly familiar with the energy sector also. Energy has taken almost the same trend. In Argentina and Chile, that is called Southern Cone model, and the entire revolution in energy sector, especially in distribution, started from Argentina and Chile. It's called Southern Cone model. First time the government utility was unbundled. So you have a holding company sitting at the top, then you have generation company, then you have transmission company, and then distribution companies. Almost similar pattern you will see in the water sector also. Wherever the neoliberalist trend came into force. But in water sector, as I told you, these four factors were extremely important. In water sector, the biggest hurdle was that the people's mindset was that water is a public good. And somehow, politicians throughout the developing world, or even in certain parts of the developed world, could not dispel this notion from the people's perception that water is not a public good. For any commodity to be a public good, it has to fulfill two criteria. It has to be a non-rival good, and it has to be non-excludable good. Non-rival, that consumption of one person does not mean that other person gets deprived. And second, that you cannot exclude somebody from its consumption. Water, obviously you cannot stop anybody from consuming water, otherwise he'll die. But since its availability is finite, the production cannot be increased beyond certain limits. That's why it is a rival commodity. And this particular paradox makes water not a public good. This somehow in the entire South, this could not be overcome. And as a result of that, all the four fundamentals of water supply got affected terribly badly. Coming back to India, when we talk about smart city, and to my mind that is the core of the management paradigm for these services, form the core of the effective management and their efficiency. Though there is recent focus has shifted totally towards municipal management, but I am still very confident that if drastic change is to be brought about, then we have to introspect that there are certain special abilities lying with the private sector. You cannot exclude private sector from these services at all. And mind you, I'm working with the government. I'm working for 22 years in the government. It's only for past 1.5 years that I'm looking after water sector. I've worked in almost, especially in finance, for a longer period of time. But it's the dynamism private sector which is extremely important and valuable for the services like water and power. In India, if we trace that how it happened, 2001 and 2, there are three places in India, Hubli, Dharbal, Gulbarga. All those who are coming from Karnataka, they would know that first time India experimented with water sector. And there's a company called Veolia, and the PPP was entered. And since then, that's the only place, and it was experimented in certain pockets of Hubli, Dharbal, Gulbarga and Bijapur. And it's the only sector, only pocket in India where PPP is still functioning efficiently and functioning with all promises. Later, many experiments have been done in other parts of the country, and we were waiting with bated breath when Mysore for the first time entered into a PPP agreement with Jusco. It's a Tata company, one of the finest companies. That for the first time such experiment was done on a pan city level, but unfortunately it failed. We all know the story, why it failed. As on today, 23, 24 such experiments have been done in different parts of the city, including Khandwa, including Nagpur, in Salt Lake, Chandigarh, all these places. Many experiments have been done. Nagpur, to a certain extent, to my mind, is a success. Otherwise, all such PPP experiments are mired with some kind of flaw or other. So one thing is very clear, that there must be something wrong with the fundamental. So the basic premise that the private sector brings in certain efficiency in these services needs to be recognized first. Second, if we accept that okay, private sector is able to deliver as per the promises, then why it is not being able to deliver in Indian situation in different cities, and why it has been able to deliver in certain pockets of India, that needs to be studied also. And to my mind, there are certain lacuna in the framework of PPP itself. which needs to be corrected. In Delhi as such, the PPP, as you all know, probably all those who are coming from Delhi would know that PPP was experimented in again 3 pockets. You have Malviya Nagar, where Degremont is working. You have Vasant Vihar, where there's an Israeli company called Tahal is working. And in Nagaloi, you have very good company called Veolia is working. Unfortunately, there were CBI cases against all 3 experiments. In 2013, it started. So complaint was made because people are obviously not very keen to have the private sector entering to water. And then CBI case was launched. If you go deep into, I do not want to comment that what is the merits of that case or not, because it was launched some 3 years back. But I just want to underscore that recently you must have seen in the newspaper, for the first time in one pocket of Delhi, 24/7 water has been experimented successfully, and it is still running. And it is running in the area where the PPP has already been entered. So it is, this area is managed by Degremont. This goes on to state that there is a great virtue lying there in the declared efficiency of the private sector. And we need to harness that efficiency. We need to introspect and see that how we can assimilate that big dynamism of private sector with the common good, common benefits, so that the poor do not get excluded from all the services that we are going to provide. Another factor, we all talk about smart grid, smart cities, To my mind, one reality which skips all such conferences is that the huge population which is deprived of basic amenities are a stark reality to these cities. And this has happened only because of disparity in economic growth from the growth centers and the hinterland. The area I come from, probably this is the poorest area of the country. I come from Bihar. And 7-8 years back, I was working as Secretary to Chief Minister. And I said that we have a huge problem on our hand because the migration will keep on increasing and the rate is going to increase in coming years. The economic growth rate at that time of Bihar was 1.2%. Delhi was growing at the rate of 11.6%. It's a natural magnet. Now, just to counteract that, once you know that it's a natural magnet, huge kind of influx is going to come to the city, whether you are equipped to cater to the incoming population or not, especially with respect to these 2 services. Water, wastewater and electricity. Obviously, the city was not ready enough. We could not plan, we could not see, and that's why most of Delhi today is virtually unauthorized colony. And once a city is unplanned, especially large part of the city is unplanned, so the first thing which gets affected is that basic amenities, basic services. So water supply will get affected, wastewater treatment will get affected, and obviously electricity, you will find it extremely difficult to supply and distribute electricity to all such population. Apart from all other difficulties that city is going to face. So one thing, to my mind, again, it is extremely important that whenever we talk about the services, especially water, wastewater and power, it has to come under the basic principles of urban planning. If the urban planning element is missing while designing and catering for these services, then we have a big problem on our hand. Especially in the wastewater sector. Delhi's situation, I'll tell you, you all are aware. I need not to tell you, I'll simply rattle off some statistics which will give you some insights. We supply 902 mgd of water, million gallon per day of water. Thumb rule, 80% of that water turns into sewage. The installed capacity as on today is 680 mgd. So the difference of that we are producing is going into different nalas and drains. Now why has it happened? Not that Jal Board was not laying sewage lines, but there is certain basic velocity by which you can lay your pipelines, sewage pipelines. No matter which company in the world you employ, there are a basic threshold. You cannot cross that threshold. But the city was growing organically at breakneck speed. In 2 months, you will see another one colony has come up. And if it is not planned properly, then the basic space which is required to set up the services also go absolutely amiss. So you are left with thousands of population. Even if you think of catering certain services, providing certain services, there's no space left to lay your sewage lines. And so as a result, the sewage is flowing in the drains. So absolutely everybody is baffled what to do. And to my mind, it is the mistake which was committed 20 years back. We could not seize that opportunity. We could not forecast that city is going to see such influx. It was a failure of urban planning, and now we need to arrest that. Fortunately, I'm happy to tell you that first thing I did after joining Delhi Jal Board, after few months of basic study about the water sector, because it's the only sector where I've never worked, is that we hired certain good urban planners, bright young students who studied abroad, came back to India with great patriotism. They are working with us now. We are trying to salvage this situation. We have adopted different methodology, different technology. We are trying to tackle all the drains, because to my mind, in a smart city, if at all we are thinking of creating smart city, Delhi as smart city, then we have to tackle wastewater first, more than water. Because wastewater is not only contaminating the original source of water, but it is also causing all kinds of burden to the society. Please remind me if my time is up. Okay. Because I'll tend to speak.
We could come back to some issue after, if you want.
Yes.
Because we could start with the discussion.
How much time I'm left?
Yeah, it's 15 minutes. It's near 20 your time actually.
Okay. So I'll just try and summarize about wastewater, and then I'll finish my wastewater sector. What we're trying to do, we need to understand that the kind of burden it is causing on the society and the city as such. It is not only health burden, because all those who are living in Delhi must be realizing that whenever the season changes, the entire city is in grip of viral fever. And this is not out of blue. You have 203 drains crisscrossing the entire city and carrying open sewage, all kinds of pathogens. What do you expect? Whenever the favorable climate comes for the pathogens to attack, you have the entire city in grip of viral fever. Just imagine the manna lost. Second, whenever the open sewage flows, you have methane emission and oxides of nitrogen. And if you just compare, other day I was just reading, methane's effectiveness as in terms of GHG emission, greenhouse gas emission, is 24 times higher than carbon dioxide. And oxides of nitrogen, its impact is almost 310 times than of. And same oxides of nitrogen, which we call NOx, it's also contributed to your PM 2.5 to PM 10. that air pollution is grappling with. So you can see its impact in various sectors as such. What we are trying to do, there are mega projects which have already been launched, probably by early next year it's going to be finished. It's called Interceptor Sewer Project. 170 mgd of sewage which is flowing would be trapped and taken to different STPs where it will be cleaned. But we realize that unless until the entire drain in its length is cleaned up, the problems of the people is not going to be alleviated. And so we have adopted a different paradigm. It will take us years. I'm not promising anybody that probably we can show you some change in 1 or 2 years. It requires 10 years of sustained effort. If there was some time, I would have talked about Yamuna Action Plan also, but time does not permit us. I'm open to question, and I have already crossed my limit. I knew that. Thank you so much for giving me patient hearing. Thank you.